Hello and welcome to our tutorial on importing translations from a spreadsheet into your Smartling account. This video will take you step by step through the process of uploading an Excel file or a Google Sheets document that contains some existing translations. We will need to follow 3 steps. Firstly, we will need to make sure that the file is formatted correctly. Then we will upload the source text to Smartling. And lastly, we will import the matching translations. Once the import is completed, the translations from your spreadsheet will be available in your translation memory, and they can also be reviewed directly in Smartling. Let's take a look at an example file. We have our English source text in column A, some German translations to import in column B, and some French translations in column C. In order for Smartling to be able to match the English source text with the corresponding translations, we need to add a so-called key. A key is an identifier for each string in your file. It allows Smartling to recognize that this source text should be matched with these translations. If your file already contains unique keys or IDs for each string, that's perfect. Simply make sure that they are located in a column to the left side of the source text, and you're good to go. If your file does not contain any keys or identifiers, you can simply create some auxiliary keys yourself. Let's add a column on the left side. The keys always need to be located to the left side of your source text. You can simply use a formula in Excel or Google Sheets to generate a numeric list. Each row can now be identified by a unique number, and Smartling will know that the source text for string 1 should be paired with the translations for string 1. We are now ready to download this file. In order to import existing translations into your Smartling account, you will need to use a CSV or comma-separated values file instead of Excel. CSV files are a very convenient and customizable alternative when it comes to uploading spreadsheets to Smartling. They allow you to use some additional functionalities that are not available for Excel, like importing existing translations. From Excel or Google Sheets, you can simply save your spreadsheet as a CSV file with UTF-8 encoding. Now that we have downloaded a CSV file, we need to apply some so-called directives. Directives are instructions that tell Smartling which column contains the source text and which columns contain the translations. To apply these directives to your file, you need to open it in a text editor. You can use any text editor of your choice. For today's example, I will be using Sublime Text, which is available for both Mac and Windows. If you are following along in this tutorial and you don't currently have a text editor on your computer, you might want to pause this video here and resume once you have installed one. Once you have installed and opened your text editor, you will just see a blank window. You can simply drag and drop your CSV file in here. It is easy to see now where the name CSV or comma-separated values is coming from. Each column in our spreadsheet is separated by a comma in this CSV file. To add some Smartling directives, simply click into the very beginning of the file and hit Enter to create an extra row. We can now insert our directives into this blank row. You can find all available directives in the article about CSV files in our Help Center. You might want to open this article in a separate browser window while you are preparing your file, so you can simply copy and paste the necessary directives over to your text editor. To get started, we want to make sure that the first row in our file, which only contains some headers, will not be uploaded for translation. So we need to apply a directive called first row header. In our Help Center article, you can look for first_row_header and simply copy over the directive that you can find here. All of our CSV directives start with a hash code and then contain some instructions to tell our platform how the file should be processed. First row header equals true means that the first row in our spreadsheet contains only some headers that should stay untranslated. Simply paste the directive into the blank row at the beginning of your CSV file. Then hit Enter to create some space for our next directive. Next, we want to specify that column A contains our keys or string identifiers. So we need to insert a directive called source key paths. In our Help Center article, you can find this directive by looking for source underscore key underscore paths. Simply copy the example directive and paste it into your CSV file. This directive says that column 1 contains our keys. In CSV, we use numbers instead of letters to identify the different columns in our file. Column 1 corresponds to column A in your spreadsheet, column 2 is column B, column 3 is column C, etc. So the directive that we just copied over says that column 1, which is column A, contains the keys. This works perfectly for our example file, and we can simply hit Enter. Lastly, we need to apply a directive to let Smartling know that the text to translate is located in column B, which is column 2. To do this, we need to apply the smartling.paths directive. You can find this directive in our Help Center article by looking for smartling.paths. You can copy over the example directive that you can find here and simply adjust the column number to say only 2 instead of 2 and 3. This next step is optional. If your file contains additional elements like translator instructions, character limits, or placeholders, you can add further directives to ensure that they will all be processed correctly. You can find all available directives in our Help Center. Once you have added all directives, please save your file directly from the text editor. We are now ready to upload the CSV file to Smartling. You can create a new job and drag and drop your CSV file. Once you have filled in all job details, please do not authorize the job, but instead click Save for later. Now that our source file is uploaded to Smartling, let's go back to our text editor. As a next step, we need to define the correct column to import for each language. In our example, we want to tell Smartling that the German translations are in column C and the French translations are in column D. All we need to do is make a small change in our smartling.paths directive. Instead of telling Smartling which column contains the English source text, we now want to indicate which columns contain the translations. To specify that the German translations are located in column C, which is column 3, we can simply amend the directive in our file to say smartling.paths equals 3. We can then insert the language code for German by typing /DEDE. We also want to import the French translations at the same time, so we will type comma to add a second language. The French translations are in column D, which is column 4, so we will type 4 and then add /FRFR for French. If your file contains more than 2 languages, you can simply continue by adding a comma and the correct column number and locale code. You can find the locale code for all of the target languages in your project under Project Settings. Now we need to save this file again from our text editor, ideally with a new file name that clearly indicates that these are the translations to import. We are now ready to import the translations to Smartling. Please navigate to the Files tab in your project and click into the CSV file that you just uploaded in the previous step. Next to one of the languages that you want to import, please click on the ellipsis menu and select the option Import Translations. You can now upload the latest version of your CSV file, which contains the translations to import. You can either import the translations straight to the published step and mark them as completed, or you can send them to a revision step in your workflow if they need to be reviewed by your proofreaders first. Generally speaking, you only need to overwrite existing translations if there are any incorrect translations for this string currently in your project or your translation memory. Once you click the Import button, our system will now match any existing translations from your file with the corresponding source text. The imported translations will then be available in your translation memory. Once the import has finished, you can go back to your job to check the status. All translations from our test file got imported successfully, so the job is now completed. If any strings didn't have an existing translation in your spreadsheet, they will show up as awaiting authorization and can be either authorized for translation or excluded. If any strings show up as in progress, you might want to check for any issues, such as placeholder mismatches that might need to be corrected before you mark the translations as completed. If you have any further questions, please feel free to visit our Help Center or reach out to your Smartling Customer Success Manager. Thank you very much for watching and for your time today.